Chapter 17. They had managed to get Daddy Jeff, Mommy Lisa, and Baby Alex bundled up and into the car, which was no small feat considering Daddy was behaving like he'd lost his mind, Mommy was still in a lot of pain, and Baby Alex chose every other semi-sane moment to make sure no one had forgotten he was around. "We'll take Dr. Breeley and follow you," AJ said, wondering at the sanity of letting Jeff drive. Jeff, AJ was learning, was not always the take-charge-I-can-do-anything firefighter he had met that first day on the bridge. That day, he had thought Jeff had a handle on everything. Today, however, he was quickly learning how wrong that impression was. "You're coming right now, though, right?" Jeff asked. AJ glanced over the top of the car as he watched Eve help Dr. Breeley into the pickup that AJ had spent most of the morning digging out of the snow. He smiled at the sight of her. "Yeah, right now." "I'd really rather have the shoulder strap," Dr. Breeley said when Eve stopped to wait for him to scoot over. "Oh," she said, taken aback. "Okay." She slammed the passenger door and went around the pickup just as AJ stepped over from the car. Her heart smiled for her. "Looks like you get to sit by me." Mischievousness flashed through his eyes. That could be dangerous. She arched her eyebrows at him. "Tell me about it." Then, with a jump, she vaulted into the pickup and settled in the middle of the seat. When he crawled in after her, Eve's senses went on all points alert. The feel of his lips on hers still reverberated through parts of her that she had thought had long since ceased to exist. Standing on that porch, his arms wrapped around her, she could have stayed there forever. Unfortunately, life, it seemed, had other plans. "You know, they're going to need a car seat," Dr. Breeley said, as if he was talking to himself when the little convoy had crossed onto the highway. Instantly, Eve pushed the hair out of her eyes and looked at him. He shrugged. "I'm assuming they're going back to Houston at some point." Eve looked over at AJ, whose countenance fell in concern. "They don't have any of their baby supplies either," Eve said. "Let's get them to the hospital in one piece, and then we'll worry about shopping," AJ said, and Eve smiled at him as she rammed her shoulder into his. "Just what you wanted to do today, huh?" He smiled at her as one of his hands dropped from the steering wheel onto hers, sending pulses of heat up her arm. "Sounds like fun to me." "Do you know anything about car seats?" Eve asked as she rounded the metal racks of the Taos Walmart that was stacked with them. "Probably not as much as you do," AJ said, following her with a cart that already had several items for Lisa in it. "Oh boy, that's not what I wanted to hear." Eve finally stopped when she reached the place she had started at. She set her hands on her hips and surveyed the choices. Newborn, so these sitting-up things are out. "Yeah, his head would look like them dumb dogs in the backs of people's cars," AJ said, bobbing his head back and forth. "I'm sure Alex would be thrilled. He's not even a day old and already you're making fun of him." AJ shrugged. "Hey, he's part of the family. It comes with the territory." "What's the difference between these two?" Eve asked, indicating two carriers on the top rack as she examined them. "Looks like about $40. "Yeah, but what makes one $40 better? Or do they just think some dumb sucker like you might not look and pay the $40 extra without realizing it?" That was harsh. AJ laid his hand on his heart even as he examined the two carriers. "Oh, this one has that turned handle thing. The other one doesn't." I wonder how much difference that would make." He stepped back. "I wouldn't have a clue." She stood for a moment, deciding, and then reached for the more expensive one. Carefully, she set it in the cart, but it didn't really fit. "It's for Alex. He's worth $40 extra." "Now what?" AJ asked, placing a hand over the box to steady it as he followed her out of that aisle. "Diapers and burp rags and pacifiers and clothes." "You know, there's only so much room in that pickup," he said, pushing and holding the unwieldy object simultaneously. "Yeah, right. You just don't want to shop." "I didn't say that." She turned into another aisle. "You didn't have to." When she stopped in front of the display of various baby paraphernalia, she surveyed it. "Just think of this as the ultimate black diamond of existence." He looked at her skeptically. "Uh-huh. I thought that was shoes. Despite the fact that she was sincerely searching for just the right items, Eve laughed. No, that would be the bowls. Oh, he said, stretching the syllable out past its length. Besides, I can't wait to see what little booties they have for him. Gamely, AJ walked up beside her and examined the display. So, what are we looking for anyway? Diapers, Eve said, finally finding the tiny stack of newborn diapers. She pulled one out and handed it to him. Then she calculated the time until they got back to Houston and pulled another one out. Better make it 2. Dutifully, he put the diapers under the car seat. And we need socks. She reached out and grabbed a tiny blue pair. Look how little these are. Aren't they precious? He took them from her and held them up. How can anyone have feet this small? And here's wipes and a bib. Oh, look at this bib. Mommy's little angel. Isn't that just precious? You're not getting any ideas, are you? He asked with concern. In mock annoyance, she reached over and hit him with the bib. You really want to go through that again? Not any time soon, he said doubtfully. I didn't think so, she said, but barely got the words out before she was drawn over to the baby clothes. Oh, look at these. She pulled one out and held it up. Isn't this just the cutest thing you've ever seen? Second cutest, he said with a grin. Then his gaze snagged on the rack of tiny hats just above the clothes. Oh man, look at this little baseball cap. We've got to get this. Yeah, now who's got the fever? Now that you mention it, I am feeling kind of faint. AJ's step swayed to the side as he put his hand to his forehead. Oh, Eve, catch me. I'm delirious from shopping fever. You're delirious, all right, but I don't think it's shopping's fault, she said as she sidestepped his antics to get to the next rack. He stopped incredulously. You're not even going to catch me? She held up another little outfit. Shopping, AJ, she said as she balanced the words with her hands. Shopping, AJ. She shook her head. It's a tough choice. Before she could react, he reached over and grabbed her around the waist. I think you should pay for that comment. Hey, now, she said, dropping her face into seriousness. Remember the blue paint incident? He looked around. I don't see any paint. Oh, yeah? There's some right here. Her finger traced its way from his temple down his cheek. And right here. She reached across and traced down the other side. And here? He asked as he leaned toward her and found her lips with his. The fact that they were standing in the middle of the baby section of Walmart escaped from her consciousness. All she knew, all she wanted to know, was the feel of his lips on hers. When he broke the kiss, he gazed at her and then shook his head. I never knew shopping could be so much fun. You just weren't shopping with the right person until now. He exhaled. I think you're right. Knowing that she needed to put distance between her and the feelings he pulled up in her, she turned around and reached for another outfit. However, he never left as he wrapped his arms around her and rested his chin on her shoulder. She held a blue and white sleeper and a blue and gold sleeper up for his inspection. Which one? Doesn't matter, he said, and she felt him burrow into her hair to get to her neck. Hey! She hit the top of his head with the hanger. Pay attention. I'm trying. Believe me, I'm trying. She shook her head. I find that hard to believe. You think this is bad? Just wait till we get to the shoes, he said, and buried his face into her hair. She couldn't help but laugh out loud, and after a second he let her go as she went back over to the cart. Oh, you know what else we need? She asked. What's that? A shower curtain. For what? He asked, not entirely sure of where that idea was headed. To put in that other bathroom, Eve said as she pushed the cart backward out of the baby stuff. Why? She scrunched her nose at him. Because, ew. I washed it. And I'm sure you did a very good job, but I'm not leaving Ash with a shower curtain that's seen that much of life. She pushed the cart down the main thoroughfare and turned into the household goods aisle. He shrugged. Maybe we should get them new towels, too. The towels didn't exactly cover their eyes. You know what? That's a good idea. There were a couple that I really couldn't get the stains out of. No, I was kidding. That was a joke. Ha. She held up 2 shower curtains. Which one? By the look in his eyes, it was clear he had no idea. That one. This one it is. She put his choice back on the shelf and the other one in the cart. Hey. Hey what? She asked with a shrug. Women's intuition. Whatever the man says, do the opposite. Now, I didn't hear you saying that yesterday. She smiled at him. Yeah, well, yesterday you knew what you were talking about. Today, you're on my turf. Oh, I see how you are. Besides, Eve said playfully, there was a rip in that one I could see from the back. Incredulously, he shook his head. You are something else. You know that? And just what that something else is, we haven't quite figured out yet, she said, running a hand over various towels on the display. Finally, she made her choice. All done? He asked, when she didn't immediately take off for another section of the store after placing the towels in the cart. Yeah, I guess so, she said, scrawling down her mental list. As they backed out of that aisle, Eve saw him pick up his shower curtain choice and turn it over. With a smile, he shook his head and put it back as he caught up to where she was. I told you. His hand found the small of her back, and he leaned in close to her. Next time, I'll listen. When she looked at him, teasing and unfettered happiness met in her chest. Smart man. And these 2 little sleepers, Eve said, pulling them out of the sack for Lisa and Jeff's inspection. We couldn't decide, so we got both of them. She laid them to the side as her hand reached down into the bag for the final item, and she smiled. And this was not my idea. Slowly, she pulled out the little hat, and Lisa melted with one look. Oh, a little baseball cap. It's so cute. Lisa took it and set it on Alex's head. No, that's not quite right, AJ said with a soft laugh. Here, let me fix it. He reached over and turned the cap around on the tiny little sleeping head. Perfect. Oh no, Jeff said, smacking himself on the head. What have we done? But Lisa looked at AJ with no joke in her eyes. It's perfect. Thanks. You're welcome, he said, barely getting the words out. Eve's gaze traced over him, and vulnerable joy was all that was written on his face. Quietly, she stepped over to his side and wrapped her arm around his back. If you need anything else, we now know where Walmart is. A question ran between Lisa and Jeff for a moment, and then Jeff spoke up. It's going to be at least Wednesday before we get out of here, and then we're going to have to drive back. You guys really don't have to stay. But, Eve said, having not realized they wouldn't all be going back together. Yeah, I guess you're right. She looked at AJ with the unspoken questions. I'm on shift Wednesday morning, he said. I'd love to stay, but I probably should be getting back. Well, since it's like short notice and everything, if you need to use our tickets to make up the difference, Jeff said. AJ held up a hand. No, hey, that's cool. No, we insist, Jeff said seriously. We won't be able to use them for a while anyway. They might as well be put to good use. Okay, AJ finally said, accepting for both of them. Thanks. No, Jeff said as he reached out for AJ's hand. Thank you. The brilliant stars shone above them as Eve and AJ sat out in the hollow on the felled tree they had ventured down to upon their return to the cabin. You know, Eve said, leaning back into his arms as he leaned on the upright roots, I always wondered why people seemed so different after they had a baby. AJ's arms moved slightly around her, but he said nothing. I mean, I had friends who were like go out every weekend and party all night, and then they'd get married and have a baby, and they were gone. I'm sure my friends thought that about me with Dustin, but we still did stuff, you know? Go out, have fun. She ran her fingers over the small rope of her belt. But when that baby comes, it's like everything else just doesn't matter anymore. For a moment, AJ just breathed. Why didn't you and Dustin ever have kids? I'm sure we would have eventually, but he was getting his career started, and I was getting mine started, and the baby thing just got put on the back burner. Do you wish now? Sometimes, she said with a small smile. I've thought about it, but me with a baby? Now there's a scary thought. I don't know. AJ pushed her far enough away from his shoulders so he could look down at her. I think you'd make a great mom. Rather than protest, she watched her hand slip down that rope. I hope so. He leaned into her so that his lips were right on her ear. I know so. She turned to look at him, and never would she have doubted that he would tell her anything other than the truth. How did I get so lucky to find you? I didn't think you were looking. I didn't either. Any doubt left in the scattered recesses of her mind drifted away the moment she released herself into the power of his arms. She was sitting there, barely balanced on the scratchy trunk of a tree, and yet she knew in his arms she would never fall. He would never let her. The feel of his lips on hers melted through her so that she wondered how she could ever have seen him as anything other than the man he was. Strong, capable, solid. Her dreams were no match for the reality that was AJ Knight. He wasn't Dustin's replacement. He wasn't Dustin. He was AJ, and that was all she ever wanted him to be. When his lips left hers, he gazed into her eyes. Her body couldn't have moved if it had wanted to, which it didn't. I don't ever want to leave, she whispered, and his soft smile slipped through her. So you're ready to try those black diamonds, huh? One hand ran its way down the angles of his face. I think I'm on one right now. Gently, he bent toward her. First, you jump off the top. He kissed her forehead. Then you slide down that first incline. His lips slipped over her temple. Then that heart-stopping moment when you think there's no way you can hold on to control. In a breath, his lips were on hers, and there was no doubt anywhere in her what that moment felt like. A moment, and then another, and then he pulled back to look at her. Tell me this isn't a dream. If it is, she said softly, I never want to wake up. He pulled her up into a hug so tight that her breath, had it been in her control, had nowhere to go. Man, I wish this was a movie, he finally said when all the oxygen in her system was gone. Why? She asked, catching her breath when he released her. Because, do you know how easy it would be to take you up there and finish this scene? Finish this? She choked on the question. Confusion dove through the happiness. That's not what you want? Are you kidding? I want it more than anything, but I saw what throwing caution to the wind did to my mom, and I don't want that for myself, or for you. Your mom and dad? They tried, I think, and maybe at first they really thought it could work, but I promised myself a long time ago that my life was going to be different, that I wasn't going to fall into the trap that they had, and that was easy. Until now. Eve finished for him as the compliment washed over her. Yeah, until now. His gaze fell from her face. You probably think that sounds really lame and childish. No, she said sincerely. I think you're smart enough to know where that line is for you. That's anything but childish. She wrapped an arm over his shoulder. Besides, it's not like I'm complaining or anything. Soft uncertainty wafted through his eyes as that statement wound through him. Are you sure? Yeah. This has been White Knight, Book 2, The Courage series, written by Staci Stallings, narrated by Becky Dowdy. Copyright 2012 by Staci Stallings. Production copyright 2014 by Staci Stallings.
Never miss a second of the story. Like and subscribe to the Staci Stallings YouTube channel today.